Thank you, Ronnie. So you've got me again. I think we've got about 45 minutes. Yeah, cool. So there's no slides in this one at all. This is a chance for us to collectively think about how we, if we are already sort of hacking on SAP stuff, maybe in a more traditional environment. So I know, how many people are ABAP developers here? Oh, great. Okay, so a lot of ABAP developers. I was going to say I'm an ABAP developer too. I was an ABAP developer. I still am an ABAP developer at heart. This talk is hopefully going to show us that one way of reaching out and sort of stepping outside the traditional boundaries of, you know, what we all might call traditional sort of NetWeaver stack, you know, the ERP system that we all know and love and everything, and sort of live and thrive within in the ABAP world. A stepping stone to moving beyond that, you know, going on what we talked about this morning, and also what Marlene said about learning and curiosity and everything. I want to use OData as a stepping stone, as a path, as a pair of sort of, well, these Nordic walking stick type things. I have no idea why that image came to mind, but I'm going to say it anyway, right? I want to look at OData, which some of us, how many people know a little bit about OData? Wow, awesome. That was, for the camera there, that was most of the room. I want to take OData as something we all know and love. And for me as a developer, and for me as an ABAP developer in the past, it was sort of delightful and frustrating at the same time. It was delightful that I, as an ABAP developer, in my own sort of environment, in a NetWeaver ABAP server, I could build an OData service quite nicely. And I'm old enough to remember building OData services before the Segware transaction. And of course, you know, the Segware transaction, SE Gateway, made it a lot easier to build OData services. And now, of course, you know, you can sort of use annotations, OData.publish equals true, and all that sort of weird and wonderful stuff. But at the time, and still now, well, until now, and until recently, it was very difficult to build an OData service for your friends, for yourself to use with a different front end outside of the ABAP environment, because, you know, one other way was to use a library like Olingo, but that means you had to write Java. And, you know, for many people, Java is great, but for other people, it's a steep learning curve. So to be able to run or build and run an OData service in a matter of minutes, to me was like this huge revelation. And OData is a really nice leveling technology and tool for us. So what I want to do is take us on a little bit of a journey and use some new technology in a language and an environment that's very accessible, in my opinion, which is JavaScript. You know, JavaScript is eating the world. You know, software is eating the world. JavaScript is that software that is eating the world. But it's not really about JavaScript because it's not going to do very much programming. And I want to build an OData service and show you that the stuff that you can do with your ABAP hat on, you can now do also outside of the ABAP environment. And therefore, you know, with that, take a step to doing some new stuff, maybe to explore the JavaScript world, to explore the Cloud Foundry world on SAP Cloud Platform, for example. You know, whatever direction that takes you in, OData, you know, use OData as something that you know and love, but do it outside of the SAP environment or outside of the SAP NetWeaver environment. Does that make sense? Well, if it doesn't, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, so this is not really scripted. I've got no slides, as I say. So what we'll do is we'll start out by looking at an OData service. And how many people have heard of Northwind? Oh, a few of us. So Northwind is the canonical, the classic OData service that's sort of everybody's familiar with if they've played around with stuff in the Microsoft world, not so much sort of in our world here. Northwind is a classic sort of model. You know, you've got suppliers, you've got products, you've got categories, you've got orders. Sort of, you know, a little bit boring, but, you know, it's useful because these things relate to each other, and it's also available on the interweb. By the way, when I say interweb, I just mean on the web, obviously. So we'll look at an OData service. We'll explore it a little bit. And then we'll reproduce a part of that OData service using this non-ABAP, non-NetWeaver technology. And the thing I'm going to play around with and use is the SAP Cloud Application Programming Model, which is a huge mouthful, so that's the first and last time I'll say that. I'll say CAP for short, Cloud Application Programming Model. And you'll see what this is all about, and it's very accessible. If I can, and I'm being serious, if I can do this, anybody can do this, right? And it's declarative, it's beautiful. So we'll produce a part of the Northwind OData service with CAP now together. Okay, so let's look at Northwind. In fact, services. Oops. God, I need my glasses. There we go. There's Northwind. In fact, let's go to. Okay, this is quite small, but it should, to us OData folks, look fairly familiar. This is a service document that sort of describes the different entities that are available in this OData service. As you can see here, there are categories, customers, employees, orders, products, suppliers, whatever. And if we have a look at the other well-known, so-called well-known OData document of a given service, the metadata document, we get some more XML, everywhere, XML everywhere. We get some more XML, which is the data about the different entities and so on. So we can see here, for example, here's this entity type category that's described, and it's got one key property called category ID, and it's got a category name property and a description and a picture. And if we go down to, for example, I don't know, just pick one at random, product. It's got a product ID key, and it's got a number of properties here with different types. And also, interestingly, it's got these things called navigation properties as well, which of course are relations to other entities. And it makes sense, right? In a model like this, a product belongs to a category, so it has a navigation property to a category. And a product is also appears on orders. Okay, we'll leave out orders for now because it's not enough time to play around with that. But a product also is from a supplier. Okay, so it's got these relations. So we can say, for example, well, let's have a look at all the different suppliers. Now, interestingly enough, XML everywhere apart from here. I'm playing around with OData. This URL, you can't see it because it's too small, but the URL is services.odata.org. That's actually a website from Oasis, who look after the OData standard, by the way. This is a version 4 of OData, Northwind, and it's the supplier's entity set. And by default, v4 spits out a JSON representation of entity sets. So it's nicer to read, I think. Anyway, we've got a number of suppliers. We've got supplier 1, supplier 2, and so on. It's all very, and we can also do things like filter equals, and this for us OData fans, aficionados, this will be all fairly familiar, but let's do this anyway for those who aren't. Filter equals country equals UK, for example. So we've now gone down to 2 suppliers. That's it. Okay, so this is all sort of pretty straightforward. We can even say, for example, ampersand and add another OData system query option. We can say, for example, expand equals supplier. So we can say we can use that navigation property. Sorry, not expand supplier, expand products. We can use that navigation property that we saw in the metadata previously to say, give me the entity set suppliers, restricted by this filter, and for each of the results, expand this relationship. So here, for example, we can say, in fact, we can even do some random thing. We can even do and $select equals product. Oh, actually, we'll put it here because it's in the expand products. Product name. Oops. Can't see that there. I can't even see it. I'm going to leave it like that. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So we've got the products here within, so the supplier 1 has 1, 2, 3 products, and supplier 8 is also in the UK, has 1, 2, 3, 4 products. Okay, so all standard OData stuff. To build that on an ABAP stack is fairly straightforward. You know, there's still actually some lifting to do. I might say sort of light to medium lifting, not heavy lifting, but light to medium lifting on the ABAP stack. But it's all familiar, and it's, you know, what we can do. We could sort of have a coffee and create one in, you know, in a coffee break or something. But you can now do that outside. So why don't we try and reproduce a subset of the Northwind OData service declaratively using this wonderful, dare I call it a language? Yeah, wonderful language called CDS. How many people have heard of CDS? How many people know what it stands for? Shout out. Core data services, or as we now like to say, because we're quite trendy, core data and services, because there's a separation. See what I did there? Nice, eh? There's a separation in our minds between the data model, the schema, and the service definition, which may look different. You know, we want these things to slide. So, what we'll do is we'll now open up my favorite thing of all time, a terminal, right? The future is terminal. And start playing around, okay? So I've already got, and this is not about how to install the whole CDS tool chain and everything, which is not very difficult at all. But what I don't want to do is hide anything from you. So I'm just going to do it all raw here. So, is that font big enough at the back? Let me know if it's not, just shout. Let me go into, because I'm very organized, local events. There we go, sit Oslo. Okay, I've got some data in there, that's all. So nothing up my sleeve. I'll make that one bigger. Nothing up my sleeve. Oh, notice how this sort of tiling window manager is fantastic. Look at that. Anyway, what I'm going to do is going to start off, kickstart a simple project. I'm thinking, why is he looking into the sky and laughing, but he's at a screen up there? It's perfect, yeah. I know it's not that bad, right? Okay, we're going to kickstart a little project and start defining something. We're going to also go really, really slowly. And in fact, yeah, okay, so why don't we say CDS init, let's call it Nord, in fact, because I learned this new word from Ronnie a short while ago, nerd, as in geek, but spelt sort of in a Scandinavian style. So in Ronnie's honour, I'm calling it Nordwind instead of Northwind. I thought that was quite good. It took me a long time to think of that. So let's go into here. Now I've deliberately, to those of you who know, I've deliberately not really done anything in the initialization. So there's nothing really, and in fact I'm not even going to delete that folder. There's nothing really here apart from some node modules and some configuration files and this package thing which we'll talk about shortly. We're not even going to delete that, right? What we're doing here is we're using Node.js or Node. How many people who've heard of Node or Node.js? Awesome. Okay. Node.js, server-side JavaScript, basically, with a wonderful package management system called Node Package Manager, NPM. Okay. And as you can see here in the package.json, what's happened is that, I will make that a bit bigger. What's happened is that we've got a dependency on the @SAP scoped CDS package, which is the CDS, the CAP engine, and also Express, which is a web server framework as well. That's all we've got, okay? So that's a good start. What we'll do is we'll create a simple file and see if we can run it, and we'll do the simplest thing that could possibly work. I've no idea whether, well, I've got a rough idea whether this is going to work or not. What I'll do as well, in fact, I'll start another thing here. I'll open up a little prompt down here and say, okay, npm in fact, nodemon, as you can tell I'm making this up, right? Nodemon. Nodemon is an npm package which will listen out for changes in files and restart things, so I don't have to keep flipping back and rerunning things, okay? So I'll install Nodemon. And then I'll say npx, because I've done this before. Yeah, that'll do. But we don't want to deploy, we'll just want to run here. Okay, fine. There's nothing there at all. That's fine. So what we'll do is go up here and we'll edit a file called make the serve service.cds. Okay, so we've got a blank file. I'm going to define a service. I'm going to call it service OSLO. Okay, so, oops. I'm sort of deliberately using Vim here, my favorite editor, partly because I can, because I'm in control of this keyboard right now, but partly to show that there's nothing special about anything you need. You don't need anything special. You notice I deleted a .vs code directory from the thing that was generated. There are some helper tools that really make it nice and comfortable to use Visual Studio Code with. You can use any editor though. So that's what we're doing. So I'm going to define this service OSLO, and I'm going to move back down there again, and in fact rerun that. There we go. So first of all, in fact, when I do this, make that bit bigger. Down here it says entity container must contain at least one entity set. So we define this service here. Already we're getting an error, but that's okay because it's sort of saying, well, yeah, this is sort of OData-ish. Okay, so why don't we do what it's asking and give it an entity set? Okay, so let's go back up here and say entity products, for example. Let's run that. Ooh, okay. Step by step, service.cds, entity oslo.products, so it's recognized that as an entity now, does not have a key. OData entities must have a key, as any fool know. So why don't we give it a key? Okay. So we'll say, for example, in fact, oh yeah, no, I'm not going to try and do some proper white spacing. I'll turn on my, there we go, there we go. So we'll say key ID, or yeah, it doesn't really matter actually, key ID integer. For those of you who are curious, I'm quite disappointed nobody's asked. It's like, where am I getting all this sort of editor help from? But there's another package called LSP, CDS LSP, which uses the Microsoft Language Server Protocol to provide knowledge about the CDS language to whatever editor can use that LSP package. And I've built something for Vim to do that. That's also built into VS Code. It's also available to use with other editors as well. So I'm going to save that. Oh, look, down here, I've saved it already. Server listening. So we've got something already, okay? So why don't we try that? So I've literally written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, 6 lines of code with lots of space. And we've got a service. It's not going to do very much at the moment, but what we'll do is we'll open up this URL. And we've got this little help page here. Welcome to CDS services. We've got a service at /Oslo, just as we had a service at /Northwind, first of all. And it's also showing us the other well-known. I went on a presentation course when I was about 19, and they said you should never go and point at the. Always use your. Well, this was on what do they call them? On overhead projectors and foils. You should always use your pen on the foil to point instead. It's like bollocks. That. I always think of that course when I do that. There's our metadata document, and if we look at that, we can see something that looks pretty valid, right? Looks pretty valid OData metadata from nothing. So we've got an entity container here, and we've got entity type definition product. So it's got a property key property called ID. This is looking pretty hopeful, right? So why don't we expand this? Let's go back, and I'll give you a tip, right? Well, not tip, but a piece of advice, something I've learned. When you're going to do a presentation with lots of typing, don't change the whole way your computer works before you got all these different key combinations I've got to remember now to move between the different windows. I installed a new window manager on Mac OS because. So there we go. I've no idea what I'm doing. Okay. So now instead of typing all this stuff in and copy pasting stuff from the Northwind. I'm not going to have you watch me do that. Instead, what we'll do is we'll start defining something a little bit more precisely or a little bit properly. So I'm going to create a new file called db. Oh, hold on. I don't want to make a directory, a database directory, and I'll explain why in a minute. I'm going to write a file called db schema.cds. Okay, so when we talked about this, I made this joke about CDS's core data and services, this separation of concerns between what the persistence layer looks like, what the schema looks like, and what the service definition on top of that looks like. And those two things can be different. You might have the same set of entities that are related in the same way, but have different consumers, different UIs, different APIs, different front ends, using that in different ways that you want to define slightly differently, exclude properties from this one, add properties to this one, all that sort of stuff. So there's a separation. And so by convention, how many people have heard of Ruby on Rails? Ruby on Rails for me was the first framework that used this whole idea of convention over configuration. So do things in this way and magic will happen. So there's a similar sort of philosophy to this framework, this CDS framework as well, this CAP framework rather. So we define our schema, our persistence layer data definition in a directory called DB, and we define our service layer in a directory called serve, and magical things happen. Okay, we don't have to. We can actually, configure to look in different places. So, but why fight against the tide? Okay, so we're going to define our data model in here, and we're going to give it a namespace. Namespace Northwind. There we go. So everything in here is going to be prefixed with the word Northwind. And you can imagine namespaces being very useful for when you're starting larger projects and sort of extending existing things and so on. This whole idea of reuse is super important here. So, in fact, I'm going to make that a bit smaller. There we go. So I'm going to define magic. The magic of ultrasnips. I'm going to define the products entity. And that, if we have a look at the metadata here, oops, sorry. Where's the metadata? If we have a look at products, there's our definition. We can see basically I've copied the definitions from here. So we've got an integer, we've got a string of length 40, product name, string 40. Why does it say product name? Oh, string 40, there we go. Supplier ID, category ID. What I haven't defined deliberately, because we're going to do those manually, are the relationships. I want to show you how easy it is to define relationships between entities. So there's the product entity definition. I'm going to go across to here and also define the suppliers, and also define the, categories. There we go. So I'm going to save that. And where are we at? Right. Now, what we can see here is nothing's changed. I've added the data definition. This wasn't planned, by the way. I've added the data definition. I'm thinking, why is that not updating? It's because we're not referencing this data definition in our service. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to go up to the service and say, using from DB schema there. Also, by the way, and these are, I'm getting my excuses in early. How many people have got a MacBook? A relatively new MacBook. How many people like the keyboard on the MacBook? It's like typing on this. Nightmare. I do use a mechanical keyboard at home, so that's part of the problem. So I'm bringing in now all the stuff from here. In fact, I'm going to say, using, where are we? Northwind. Is it North? Oh, sorry, not Northwind. There we go. Using Northwind, I'm now going to say entity, or service, OSLO, entity, products as projection on Northwind dot products. Let's just leave it there for a second. Let's go down and make that a little bit smaller. There we go. Ooh. Is that, oops, come on. There we go, right. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so we can see a little bit more of it. There we go. So that's all we've got. We've got our entity products as projection on Northwind.products. That products is defined in here. So when I save this now, and also save, there we go, using Northwind. There we go, it's restarted. So now if we go here to the metadata, we should see something that looks even more like Northwind. Okay? So now what we want to do, in fact, I'm going to move this down a little bit further. There we go. Now, suppliers, and what was the other one? Categories. There we go. Categories. Categories. Fine. So now we have product suppliers and categories defined as entities, but they're not related to each other. There's no navigation properties. So we'll do that manually now. How are we doing for time, by the way? 15 minutes. Perfect. Perfect. I'm going to say perfect. I have no idea. It's like, shit, is that enough time? I have no idea. Perfect. So we're going to define something that will cause the navigation properties to appear here. Now, we do that. Where do we do that? Well, we might as well do that at the schema level because that's really what the persistence layer is all about. We're going to define the relationships between the entities at the bottom level because that's where they belong. So let's move down here and say, well, if we remember, in the products definition, the product has a category. We're going to leave orders, and it also has a supplier. Okay, so why don't we write that out? I'm going to say here, let's do it in the order I just said it. Category, association to categories. Simple as that. Well, not quite, but almost as simple as that. And in the same way, I'm going to say supplier. I did actually install a Vim plugin that will do the tabs automatically, but I'm not even going to try and use that now. To suppliers. Okay. So this is called a managed association. We don't have to worry about foreign keys and supplier underscore ID or supplier ID or anything like that. This will do it for us. How many people, is anybody here? I'm not expecting a huge number of hands, if any. How many folks remember River as a project within SAP? Ooh, RDS, River Data Services or something. I don't know what it stands for. I think there's a lot of River's DNA in this. So we've defined now this thing. So in fact, why don't we just run that, or save that rather, have the server relaunch. In fact, no, let's carry on for now. Let's carry on. Oops. So we've now got a relationship between the product and the supplier and the product and the category, but the suppliers also need an inverse relationship as well. So let's add that as well. So suppliers has a relationship to the products association to many products. I'm going to make this a bit smaller so we can see it on one line. In fact, I did know. Oh well, I'll do it like this. I did know how to make the window bigger, but I can't remember how to do it. Anyway, associated to many products on products dot supplier equals me, self. Okay? Simple as that. In the same way, we can say products association to many products on products.category equals me, as in self. Okay, so let's have a look. We've restarted the service. It's pulling information from the services.cds, which in turn is causing it to pull information from the schema.cds. Let's make that a bit smaller. And now we have in our category, we've got the category ID and the name and the description, the picture. In fact, why don't we, just for the sake of it, why don't we exclude picture, because picture's got this binary stuff and it's, you know. So why don't we have an example of excluding something for now by going to here and saying in this service document, because that's the whole point, right? So we want to say, well, our service looks different. We're not just automatically exposing everything from the persistence layer. Let's say excluding picture. Okay, so now when we save that and refresh this, what? Picture, excluding picture, has it restarted? It's launched.
You're on the wrong tab. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. I did that deliberately. But no, thank you. I didn't do that deliberately at all. Yeah, I love the Retina display, but it's a bit the URL. I can't see what's in the URL. Anyway, so thank you. Yes, so we've now excluded the picture property that exists at the schema level in the persistence layer, but we're not exposing it in this particular service. Okay. Anyway. What I wanted to show you was, and I will point with my mouse this time, we've got a navigation property. So the categories has a navigation property to products. The products entity type has a navigation property to category and also a navigation property to supplier. Notice I use the word managed in terms of managed associations. It's doing it all for us. Where did we define something underscore ID, supplier underscore ID? We didn't. It's doing it for us. Okay, so it's really easy. So far, so good. So basically, we could stop here, right? We're there with a really simple version of the Northwind OData service in just a few lines of declarative code. But let's go one stage further and add some data and play around with it just to see how easy that is as well. So I'm not going to type all the data in, but it's actually a GitHub repo with the Northwind data as CSV. That's really cool. So what I did was I got a copy of the suppliers, categories, and products CSV data. And using a feature of the CAP engine within here, within the Node environment, convention over configuration, if you put CSV files in a certain place and deploy, okay, all we've been doing is running a service. There's no underlying persistence layer at the moment. We've still got an OData service. But now we're going to create a persistence layer in the form of a SQLite layer. This will support SQLite out of the box. It will support, of course, HANA. There are plans to support other relational databases like Postgres, QL, and so on. And eventually also, in the planning at least, are non-relational, for example, MongoDB. But then let's talk about that another time. SQLite is a great way, again, for you as a hacker on your own, back in the evening to build something locally. We can use SQLite. SQLite is a file-based SQL RDBMS. So why don't we now go here and install the SQLite driver that CDS needs to be able to talk to a SQLite database, which is just something, database.db. Okay, so I've just installed the SQLite driver from the Node Package Manager system. Now I can say CDS, put it up here, CDS deploy to SQLite, I don't know, let's call it OSLO.db. Okay, So now we've got, oh, my phone buzzed then. I've got it connected up to SQLite. Not really. So now we've got a file here, where is it? OSLO.db. Okay, so let's have a look in that. SQLite 3, OSLO.db, .schema. This will just show us the definition here. We can have a quick look at this. We can see, there we go, that'll do. Create table Northwind suppliers. We've got all the SQL specific definitions that it's created for us and deployed to the persistence layer, but we've also got some views. The table definitions relate to the persistence layer at the DB level, and the views relate to the service level definitions. Okay, so we should see, or rather we should not see, where is it? In the category definition, there we go. Create view OSLO categories as select ID, name and description, but not pictures. Okay, even though we got the pictures defined at the table level. Okay, so far so good. So that's the deployment of the schema to the database. But now, if we leave SQLite and create what's it called, a directory. Ronnie will know that I'm trying to not ever to say folder, because that's like too UI-like, too GUI. Directory. I'm going to say make dir db csv, or csv even, and where is it? Store. Oh, there we go. Store star into db csv. Yeah, I'll show you. There we go. We got in here. We've got Northwind categories, Northwind products, and Northwind suppliers, CSV files. If I now do a CDS deploy again, and of course we don't need to say to SQLite anymore because it's already stored that information. We now get filling this from this, filling products from this CSV file, filling suppliers from this CSV file. Now we can say CDS run, and hopefully, as well as having the metadata, we can also go to suppliers. And this is not me mistakenly showing you the real Northwind OData service. This is our OData service that we've created from nothing, just in a few lines in what, half an hour? Now, before CAP and CDS came along, unless you were well skilled and versed in the Java ecosystem and Olingo, and it was quite complex as well, you couldn't do this. For me, this is a huge step up for us wily developers here in the room and architects who want to sort of start playing around with stuff that you might be at home in the evening or something, you haven't got access to your SAP system, your NetWeaver stack or whatever, or you can't be bothered downloading the developer edition. What an amazing way to sort of step up and start that journey of curiosity from OData outwards into UIs with React, with UI5, with whatever. So, is this a fully fledged OData service? Remember that we've actually made an OData operation here. We've done a query, and that's being handled as normal. But does it handle other stuff? Does it handle system query options? Does it handle expand? Well, let's try. $filter equals, let's do it again. Well, why don't we say city, city, I've no idea actually. City equals London. I can see there's one there. Are there any more? No, there's only one, okay, but we know the query works, okay. We can say, for example, and $expand equals products. Will it do an expand for us? Yes, it does. So this is not just some sort of, Mickey Mouse OData service that, that you get that just does simple things. It does everything you want. But the key thing is, I've got about 5 minutes left. The key thing is, you're not going to be satisfied with an out-of-the-box implementation, are you? You're going to want to customize it yourself. So we've just written some declarative code. It doesn't move, it just sits there and declares what's required. Now let's write some, dare I say it, procedural code, some actual code in JavaScript to modify an operation, to have it do something differently. And we're not going to do something hugely exciting, given I've only got a few minutes left. But what we'll do is the same as what you would do to do something completely different. You can intercept the request before it's handled. You can grab hold of the request just before it goes out the door and do something with it, which is what we're going to do. Or you can completely replace the implementation of that request. So we can do a service before, a service after, or a service on. Those are the three main hooks. We'll do a service after. Okay, let's go across to here. And let's go, let's do that right, MPX again. MPX, CDS.js, that'll do. Oh, CDS deploy, we don't need to deploy, we'll just do run, there we go. Right, okay, so. Here we go. We don't need, well, we'll leave the services file there. Down here instead, though, we'll write a file called service. And if we call, again, convention over configuration, if we create a file in the service directory of the same name as the service file here, but call it a JavaScript, it will use any implementation it finds in that JavaScript file to enhance or replace the services defined in the same name file .cds. So we'll say service.js. Okay. Ooh, yeah, what's going on here? Ah, there we go. Yeah, perfect. So what it's now saying is it's crashed because it can't find any module. What it's trying to do is extract or load a module from that file, but it's not there, is it? So let's create one. We can say, for example, module.exports, and this is standard module programming in JavaScript. It's just a way of writing sort of libraries that expose functions that can be used by other things that import those functions. And it's a function. Why is that not so? Oh. Ah! Hold on. There we go. Now, there we go. Service.js. I replaced the persistence layer by mistake. There we go. Back again. Module exports equals gets a service. Okay. We've created the very basic service, a very basic implementation that does nothing, but we can see it's being pulled in here, serving OSLO @/OSLO with an implementation in service.js. So now let's start adding stuff to that. We'll just add a couple of lines and then we're done. We'll say after, what should we do? After a read request, which includes query actually, to the products entity set, run the following function. And I'm going to use the shorthand here. That function can take an argument that you'll get all the results of that query. Or if we say, if you use the word each, convention over configuration, we get one result at a time that we can process. We can say, for example, each dot, well, in fact, each dot, if it's discontinued, and we've got some in stock, so units in stock, then each dot product name equals each dot product name plus, I hate double quotes, sale, oops, sale, on sale, trying to sell them all out. And then finally, close those quotes there, I think, already, there we go. Oh, hold on, what's going on here? Unexpected token, so, okay, let's look. Oh, tell you what we'll do, go full screen. And there we go, that's better. Now I can see it. Served after, oh, there we go. What have I forgotten? Anybody? There, that's better. That's why it wasn't auto-completing for me before. And now we've got the brackets thing here. This is, as you can see, is completely, oh, there we go, completely unprepared. Whew, okay. So now, if we refresh, let's go just to the products. Whew, it worked. So now, where there is a discontinuation of the product and there's some still units in stock to sell, we've got the word sale. So that's how simple it is to create an OData service from nothing with a few lines of code, and you can do it on your PC. Is that what you call it these days, a PC? On your PC with whatever editor you want. And of course, if you want a good editor, the only one is Vim, obviously, but with a better keyboard. That's it. I guess that's 0 minutes left. Yeah, what's the message? What's the message I want to give here? OData's still here to stay, especially with, you know, all the different APIs that are coming out these days. It's really easy to use. It's something familiar to us all, and it's something that will hopefully help us move beyond what might be our current comfort zone of the ABAP environment, which I completely relate to as well, into the world, into the open source world of Node.js, of JavaScript, of NPM, of TypeScript, of SAP Cloud SDK, of Vue.js, of React, of UI5. You know, there's a huge world out there. I'm looking out there. There's a huge world out there as well. So have at it. There's loads of places to find how to install the cap tools and everything. It's really easy. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So that's it. And Ronnie's going like, shut up, DJ. Well, are there any questions with the box?
Are there any questions? No? It's okay. I would actually like to ask you for one thing.
Well, hold on.
I have a question. Can you go back to the root and show the cool in Fiori link?
Well, yes.
For those that don't like terminals.
Hands up and be careful. Who doesn't like terminals here? Okay, yes. So this is one thing I was going to do if we had time. We've got 2 minutes. We'll do something. Yeah. So one of the recent features of CAP is that the runtime will automatically provision for you, provision is maybe too strong a word, will create for you a Fiori Elements app, a list report app, showing the entities in these different categories here. So if I click on, for example, the in Fiori link for products, in fact, I'll make that full screen. I'll make it a bit smaller. We get something like this. Now,
we're missing something.
We're missing something. What are we missing, Ronnie? It begins with A.
Anyone?
Annotation.
Yeah. Annotations.
OData annotations.
OData annotations. So, are you giving me a bit more time here to talk about annotations or not? No, maybe I don't know. Should we do some annotations?
I can give you
2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes. Should we do some annotations to make this look a bit better? Okay, so what we can do is go across here. Let's go full screen again. I'm going to create a file called annotations.cds and put some annotations in there and hopefully influence what this Fiori Elements thing does. So create a new, right, serve.annotations.cds. Put me a bit on the spot here, but anyway, annotate Northwind.products with, well, first of all, let's just see if this works generally with at UI.select select options. Oops, I can't even type. There. Let's see if that works. What we should see, oh, hold on. Oh, I know it's not select options. God, I'm thinking ABAP. Select options. What am I doing? Selection. What's it called? Selection fields. There we go. So we've now got rid of all those horrible selection fields up here. But what we'll do, finally, one more thing, is go across to here again and make that full screen and say annotate. Well, in fact, let's do this as well. Let's do it like this with UI. Let's put that one back in again. Selection fields, no selection fields, and let's describe the list item, which is the individual record, with a number of fields, one of which is going to be the product name. That's the property, isn't it? Product name. Give it a label as well. Name. And the other one, value. Well, that'll do actually. That'll do, just to show the annotations. There we go. And finally, there. If this works, it'll be amazing. So restarting and go here, go across to here.
Maybe it's line item.
Line. Why can't? Thank you. Why can't I think of any of the line item? I think you're right. See, what was I talking about? What was Marlene talking about before? This is not about individuals. This is about us all getting together. This better work now. What? Oh, I selected one second. There we go. So we're actually driving the UI with annotations, really simply, if you can remember what the actual annotations are called. But thank you very much, both of you.
Yeah.
So, on that bombshell, as you say.
On that bombshell, that's over.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.